The Vineyard's Last Laugh. The Bellini vineyard stretched across the rolling hills of Tuscany, rows of grapes ripening under the late summer sun. For 3 generations, the Bellinis had bottled wine so fine it was spoken of in hushed reverence at village festivals. Old Vittorio Bellini had passed just that spring, and the family gathered in the vineyard's stone house to hear his will. Everyone expected a fair division, but when the lawyer cleared his throat and announced that the vineyard was to be entrusted entirely to Marco, the eldest son, the room went cold. Marco leaned back smugly, swirling a glass of Chianti. Naturally, he said, "Father knew I'm the only one capable of carrying the Bellini name." His sisters, Julia and Rosa, exchanged glances but said nothing. They had worked in those fields since childhood, pruning vines, stomping grapes. But Marco had always cared more for money than for soil. Within weeks, Marco began bottling wine under a new label, striking deals with restaurants in Florence. He bragged endlessly in the piazza, declaring that the Bellinis were now a serious business. The villagers whispered that something tasted off. When the annual harvest festival arrived, Marco prepared his grand unveiling. A long table stretched across the square, decorated with banners proclaiming, "Bellini wine, tradition perfected." Marco strutted with bottles polished to a gleam, pouring generous tastings for the judges. "Best you'll ever taste," he boasted. "My father's legacy, refined by me." The first judge took a sip. His brow furrowed. Another judge grimaced, whispering to the others. The wine was sour, flat and thin, with none of the rich body Vittorio's wines had been known for. Marco's smile faltered as murmurs spread through the crowd. Then, from the edge of the square, Julia and Rosa appeared. They carried simple wooden crates, each marked only with the family crest Vittorio had carved years before. Without flourish, they set them on a table and began pouring. The moment people tasted their wine, the square erupted with cheers. It was everything Vittorio's wine had always been. Smooth, bold, kissed with the sun and earth of Tuscany. "What? How?" Marco stammered, rushing over. "I had the recipe. I had the barrels." Julia looked at him calmly. "Yes, you had the barrels. The ones father filled with ordinary grapes." Rosa lifted her glass. "The true vines, the ones he grafted by hand, were hidden at the edge of the vineyard. He entrusted them to us long ago. He knew who would honor his gift." The judges awarded the festival prize to Julia and Rosa. Villagers crowded their stand, praising the wine, while Marco stood red-faced and alone beside his untouched bottles. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, the sisters sat in the vineyard, sipping from their father's secret stock. Their children played between the rows of vines, laughter echoing through the twilight. Rosa raised her glass. "To Father, for knowing us better than we knew ourselves." Julia smiled. "And to Marco, for teaching us that greed turns good grapes to vinegar." They clinked glasses. The wine was sweet, but the revenge, ripened by patience and love, was sweeter still.